On a national level, I mean, you mentioned Gary Johnson. What's kind of your take on both the Republican and Democrat parties as a whole, not necessarily specific candidates?
Well, as a libertarian, like other parties, I guess Libertarian has their nuances and their wings and so on, and I always talk about when too many libertarians get together, it's likely to break out in a fist fight, and there are times it seems to come close, but I consider myself a leftist libertarian. And so that puts me at odds with a lot of my fellow libertarians in some respects. But a libertarian tends to be someone who, on social issues, would side with the Democrats. Certainly, I'm probably the only politician who put a big ad in Q Salt Lake, the gay newspaper in Salt Lake, saying, "I'm on your side, vote for me." I think I'm the only politician of any party that did that this year. So, and so on social issues, I want the government out of my life. I don't want the government telling me, what I can read. I don't want the government telling me what I can put in my body. I don't want the government telling me who I can love. But I'm also a fiscal conservative. The Democrats like taxes more than I do, and they want to take more of my money, and they want to do things with it, and some of them are good things. But I have a real problem with a simple thing like I put my money in the bank, and I get interest out of it that doesn't quite keep up with inflation. So I'm actually losing money in terms of real ability to pay for something, and yet I pay taxes on the interest that my bank account makes. Now, Republicans tend to want to get rid of some of those taxes. Democrats don't. So whereas my heart oftentimes is with the Democrats because my purse is not with the Democrats. And so the Libertarians gives me the best of both worlds. I don't like taxes. I don't like paying for things that aren't absolutely necessary, and I don't want the government bothering me. And from a libertarian's point of view, we're the consistent ones. Democrats say, we're not going to bother you on a social level or individual rights, but we are going to pester you for more taxes. The Republicans say we're going to cut back on your taxes, but we're going to be looking over your shoulder at your
everyday
lifestyle.
Everyday life.
And I don't want any of that. So to me, being a libertarian seems so much more consistent. Keep the government out of my life as best we can. Now, it doesn't mean I'm an anarchist. It doesn't mean that I don't believe there should be any government. But I do want to. I find myself using the phrase, I would say more than once a day, probably. What a waste of taxpayers' money. And it comes up in all kinds of spheres,
I think I've said that myself.
Yeah, so it comes up in all kinds of spheres that the government has just wasted a lot of my money, and I don't like it. So I'm comfortable being a libertarian. Somebody asked me just the other day, if you had to vote between Mr. Obama and Mr. Romney, how would you do it? And of course I said, but I don't have to. The whole point, of course, of the Libertarian Party is that I don't have to. Well, yes, but
knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah, but
scenario.
I can tell you this. I practice law in the federal courts on a regular basis. I do not want Mr. Romney appointing federal judges. Federal judges that he will appoint will be anti-individual rights. They will not support the Bill of Rights as I see it. They will not support the First Amendment. They will not support the Fifth and Sixth and Fourth Amendments. They might support the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, but they will They will not understand the right against self-incrimination. They will not understand the right against unreasonable searches and seizures. They will not understand free speech. And Mr. Romney has taken a pledge to support, conservative judges. I do not want him appointing federal judges. And to me, as a constitutional lawyer, that's more important than anything else I can think of. And so there is no way in the world that I would support Mr. Romney as for President of the United States. I'm horrified by the proposition. But I live in Utah, and because I live in Utah, we know who's going to carry the state of Utah, and I have the total freedom to vote for whom I please, and it will not be either of them.
Right enough. What's your take just in general? I mean, you and I spoke a little bit about this earlier. General media coverage regarding the Libertarian Party and candidates this year. Could you talk a little bit about what your observations?
Sure. Well, I found it particularly funny yesterday. I have a case going on in the courts back east. I'm not doing terribly well at it right now, honestly, but it's an interesting case. And yesterday I spent over a half hour on the phone with a reporter from the New York Times. And I'm a native New Yorker, and I have to admit that talking to the New York Times is pretty cool. I hung up and couldn't help but chuckle that here I am spending a half hour or so on the phone with the New York Times, and I couldn't get 3 words about my candidacy from the Deseret News or the Salt Lake Tribune. They say, well, you're not a member of a major party. I'm sorry, guys, but the Democratic Party in Utah is not a major party. My Democratic opponent hasn't got a chance in the hot place. He will get beat so bad that he won't be a factor. So maybe he'll get more votes than me. I figure I would very much like to come in second. And I figure that would be somewhat of a testament to the two-party system. But the Democratic guy is not going to win. He's not going to come close to winning. He's not going to be a factor. So why does he get interviewed and why does he get mentioned in the press when I don't? Tradition? I don't really know. Laziness? I suspect that's really the answer. Gee, I guess I have to write an article about a candidate who, well, I'll just do what everybody else does. It's laziness is what it is. Why would they spend their time on a candidate who, number one, is no different than the other guy, and number two, hasn't got a chance in the hot place, when they could really discuss the issues by talking to me? I don't know why they would do that except laziness.
All right, well, there's one last, we'll wrap this up.
Okay.
There's one last thing you'd just like to tell the people of Utah, or out on YouTube, I guess, is where most anyone can really see this. What would that be?
Well, I would just say that that I'm in this to change people's minds and to get people thinking about new ideas. If you believe in freedom, if you believe that the government shouldn't be looking over your shoulder, we use the term more and more these days, the surveillance state. If you don't think the government should be watching your every move, if you don't think the government should be telling you how to live, if you don't think the government should be supervising you and playing parent, basically, here's an opportunity to be heard. It's really rather simple. You vote Libertarian, things will, in fact, lighten up. And if you don't, the road to a lack of freedom is so clear. And, it just makes me sad. So we do what we can. We do what we can to be heard and to give people a real alternative. And so if you want a real alternative and you're not happy with no choice at all, then vote for me and tell your friends, and let's see where the revolution takes us. In the words of Karl Marx, you have nothing to lose but your chains.
All right. Well, thanks for your time, Andrew. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.